What's up, everybody? Welcome to the live stream. Woo! Woo! It's good to be back. It's good to be back. Back with you here on a Sunday afternoon. I don't know what I would every Sunday would come along and I would just feel like I should be doing something. Just this general sense of unease. And then now I really remember what it was. It was live streaming. I came into my room, my office. My camera, you can't see it, it's covered up, but the camera that I'm streaming from, it had fallen. It's on like a wall mount behind my monitor. It collapsed. And I got to tell you, you have no idea how much effort I put into this camera's alignment. Maybe you do. Like, it needs to be, so like, it has to be as low as it can be so it doesn't look like you're just looking down on me. But it has to be over my monitor. And it has to be square to the room so that it doesn't look skewed. It has to be level. And I've just realized this very day, because, you can't see my screen, but like if you look, here, I'll put my mouse on screen. If you look right here, right, I've got these windows dividing my screen in half, right? So I can see exactly where the center of the screen is. And I've just realized, as I was going into this stream, here's the camera, right? And like, here's the actual center of the screen. The camera is like 3/4 of an inch off from the center of the screen, and it's gonna drive me crazy. But I'm gonna resist the urge to mess with it right now. Oh God. Because what I'd have to do, I can't just cock the camera, because then the room will be skewed. I'm gonna have to adjust it so it moves. Oh. Maybe I'll just move my monitor over. If I moved my monitor over 3/4 of an inch, though, then my monitor wouldn't be centered on my desk. And that would drive me crazy. So instead, I'm going to distract myself by answering your questions. Oh, that's what we're going to do here. Oh, I'm just going to, hang on, I got it. I know how to fix this. Wait, no, not there. Here's how I'm going to fix this. You ready? Ready? Fixed! Because my OCD won't notice that this window is slightly bigger than that one. That's it. All right, here's what we got going on. You guys are asking questions, I'm going to answer questions. Right? That's what we're going to do. You're going to ask the questions in the chat. Blunty's going to queue them up. Blunty! Are you there, Blunty? Blunty.
It's me.
It's a me, Blunty. Good to see you again, man. Good to be back with you. What did you play? What game did you play during our long live stream hiatus?
Well, I unfortunately got back into World of Warcraft because the expansion's coming up.
You were talking about doing that.
Yeah, so I got all the characters to max level except for one. So I can just pick when I get in. It's like they did some event where it's like super fast. So
yeah.
I played some more Tarkov. Tarkov's about to wipe, so they've been doing pre-wipe events. I've been playing ABI, which is Arena Breakout Infinite, which is another Tarkov clone sort of thing that they're trying to do, but it's very pay to win and it's free to play. And I've also been playing Passive
It's pay to win, free to play?
Yeah, it's free to play, but like you can get gear and items. Like Tarkov, the whole point of Tarkov is that you're playing an extraction shooter where you have to get out with the gear or you die and you lose everything.
Right.
But in this game, you can buy money that you can buy items with, so you can pay your way out of losing, basically.
Does that take the fun out of it for you?
Not for me, because I'm not paying, and I get to shoot people who spent money on their gear, and I get to take it.
Oh, that's actually an interesting dynamic. A lot of times on the free-to-play, pay-to-win games, it's annoying to me because if you don't pay to win, it's kind of like, well, you're just a scrub, and you're just going to get slaughtered. But if it's like, hey, you want to be pay-to-win and suck at the game? Great, you're just funneling gear to people who are better than you. That's actually... Yep. I kind of dig it. It's the people who pay to win, if they don't have the skills to back it up, who are the scrubs who are getting just wrecked. Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's been my experience so far anyway.
I'm sure they'll find a way to screw it up.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I haven't played anything. I don't play. I don't have fun. I just, anyway, let's not get into that. I'm glad to be back. Blunty's going to queue up the questions. We can see right over here. Here's our queue. The questions are already lining up. You can ask questions in the chat. You can ask questions in the Discord. Hello, patrons! This is my Discord server. My patrons live here. And patrons get 37% more priority in having their questions answered on stream. That's actually scientific. We have an algorithm. No, I made that up. But I do appreciate them extra. Thank you, patrons. If you just hit the $ right here, you can leave a super chat. And I will read this. That's about the only way to guarantee that you get your question answered on stream is to leave a super chat. And I'll start answering those usually about 20-25 minutes after. Just like to kind of get into the groove before we start doing the super chats. As always... There are always too many questions on stream for me to answer them all. If I don't get to your question, feel free to email me. jb@joshuabardwell.com is my email address, and I answer all questions. Well, I won't say all. Some questions come in, and I'm like, we're not answering that one for reasons. But I answer almost all questions without regard for whether you're a patron or whether you paid. I just try to help people out. And so please, I hate it when people feel bad or feel like they've been rejected because I don't get to their question on stream. That's just how streams are, though. So let's begin, and we'll begin with this question. Let's take a question from... There are no questions from Discord members. Okay, fair enough. Let's take a question from the YouTube chat. This is Rick Moores, who asks, Hi, I'm new to the FPV drone. I've got a question about sound. When I'm training to hover, the pitch of the drone changes from time to time without any changes in my throttle. I mean... It's hard. Rick, it's hard to answer that question without like maybe even like a recording, and YouTube isn't going to let you share a link to a recording anyway, so we probably will not really be able to hear what's going on. I would say though that, you know, remember the drone is always trying to fly itself. Okay, so like you may be hovering and you may not be moving the throttle, but as the drone is kind of doing its thing, maybe sometimes there's a slight change in the volume or the pitch as it responds to something that's happening, you know? I don't know. Notice, what do you mean my screen's not centered? Is it now?
I think they mean your other screen where you move that middle bar, and now people are OCD about you not having
no! Is he just yanking my chain? Here, let's do this. I can't have people be yanking my chain, Blunty. There. Now it's so off center it must be intentional. I'm so easy. It's so easy to get my goat. Like, if you come at me and you're like, you suck and your mom's ugly, I'll be like, I'm not falling for that. You're just trying to get my goat. But you do something like even vaguely subtle. Okay. So I think it would not be that unusual for the motors to change pitch somewhat. But I got to tell you, I mean, that would weird me out a little bit. Like, normally I expect, and I actually use the sound of the motors and the pitch of the motors as a proxy for throttle position. In fact, there are sometimes when I have flown far enough away that I can't hear the motors anymore, and it's really distracting that you can't hear the response to the throttle movement the way that you normally can. So, I don't know. Ideally, I think I would like to hear the recording of what's going on, and maybe I could give you a little more advice. But that's how we're going to leave that one for now, I think. Night Owl wants to know what I think about the leaked images of the GoPro Hero 13. Well, the first thing I think about any leaked images is, are they real or are they just fake renders? I don't know. I don't know if we have any idea of how credible these leaks are. Hold on, I gotta move this shit out of the way so I can get at my Stream Deck. Come here, Stream Deck. So, like, I saw a leak of the Hero 13 Black and that had, like, a heat sink across the front and no front screen. And I was like, that's interesting. Now this leak doesn't have that. And I'm like, well, okay, that's interesting. Like, I don't know how much we can... premature Amazon listing picked up by Tech Stories India. Hero 13 Black following up an intriguing new entry-level model. Maybe that's what I saw. The entry-level one is the GoPro Hero. Oh, okay. No front screen. There we go. Okay, I'm not crazy. I mean, I'm all for entry-level models with no front screen because, like, that presumably will increase the durability, right? Does the GoPro Hero have a back screen? Is it going to be like the Hero 11? No, there we go. We do have a back screen. I thought the Hero 11 had a lot of potential. The 11 Mini. Unfortunately, the Hero 11 Mini had some reliability and performance issues, like it was locking up on people and stuff. And I think it wasn't adopted by more FPV pilots as a result. I thought it had a lot of potential in terms of the form factor, just that it was going to significantly increase the durability. I'm kind of surprised the 11 Mini didn't become like the go-to for FPV pilots. But the firmware issues may have had something to do with it. It's freaking $200 now. That's a great deal. Can you buy it on Best Buy? I'm sure you can. They have it. If you could get a Hero 11 Mini, $200, and you can buy it on Best Buy with Best Buy insurance. Like, I don't know. To be honest with you, I don't run a GoPro as much as I used to. These days, you know, digital video recording is pretty good. Even the DVR is good enough for a lot of the things you would want to do, and GoPros are expensive. So, like, the days when I would basically always run a GoPro, in some ways are past. But, like, seems to me like a Hero 11 Black Mini for $200 with Best Buy insurance, that seems like a pretty good deal. I don't know. Yeah. So as far as the 13 goes, I'm kind of excited about this one with no front screen and a lower price point. Obviously, we have to see what kind of features and weight and so forth it comes out with. As far as the 13, though, I mean, this is slick. That's slick. Replaceable lens. Maybe a better way to put ND filters on. I mean, the 13 has, the 12 and 13 have always had removable front cover. Wait, which one didn't? The 8 didn't have a removable cover. I think they went back to the removable cover on the 10. I'm not sure. I might not have that right. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be cool maybe for people doing more cinematic stuff. I think a lot of the people doing hardcore freestyle now just aren't even running an action cam. They're saving the weight and they're saving the cost. Magnetic ball joint mount. Well, that won't work for FPV. It'll just fall off. So forget that. Yeah. Anyway. Well, we'll see what happens when it comes out. Let's see here. Brian Teeger asks, I just built a demibot with a Foxeer F405 stack. My quad runs away on liftoff. What do I do? Accelerometer seems fine. It's not the accelerometer. Props are on correctly. Skydozer says, have you felt how strong a magnetic ball mount can be? Look, Skydozer, I get it that magnets can be pretty powerful, but for the strength you need to hold a GoPro on a quadcopter in a crash, you would need much too large of a magnet for it to make sense. If the magnetic mount can be removed by hand, then it can come off in a crash, right? Yeah. Runaway on liftoff, usually, like, the number one thing that causes that is you have the flight controller set to props out rotation, but the motors are rotating props in, or vice versa. Go to the motors tab, look at the diagram there. Don't just go from memory. Like, what people will do is they'll say, well, my quadcopters are props out. So then they'll set the motors to props out, and then they'll go fly, and they forget that you also need to set the flight controller to props out, and that mismatch causes it to fly away as soon as you arm. So there are other things that could cause that, but that's the number one most common cause. And you ask people, well, are your motors spinning the wrong direction? And they go, no, they're props out. And I'm like, okay, but did you tell the flight controller that they're supposed to be props out? See, there's a mismatch. Anyway.
I'll just point out that a common way to tell if you did the switch wrong is if it yaws when it takes off.
Except
it will spin on yaw.
Is that, I mean, with all due respect to your experience, which is substantial, in my way of thinking of it is that it tries to yaw left and it actually yaws right, and so then it tries to yaw the other way, and basically you get a kind of a like shaking your head as it climbs, and it doesn't actually do a full circle.
I can tell, yeah, I mean, I've seen them do spirals all the way up in the air and then fail safe
Weird.
one way. And then it was specifically the switch being set wrong. Maybe it's only one direction that does that, and the other direction will do the oscillation or something.
I don't know. That's interesting. I guess if you think about it, when you have it set the wrong way, basically pitch and roll work correctly, but yaw is reversed. And so it makes sense to me, Blunty, that you should get a runaway, because it will try to yaw left, but it will actually yaw right, and that should make it try to yaw more to the left and spiral. Oh, that's interesting.
That's why I always pre-diagnose with people with throttle. I always, like, if I see it spin on yaw, I immediately check the switch. Otherwise, I go through the 4 steps of all the props and stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. No, it should just go whoop, donk, and disarm. What is it that makes it go I don't know. That's interesting. I know I've seen that, where it basically just goes back and forth on yaw repeatedly as it climbs into the air. Huh. Regardless. That's the number one thing you should check. That's the most common mistake people make in my experience.
I'll just say the other thing, if you have everything set up correctly and you're still getting a runaway, then it could be like filtering related or something because you self-built this. And if you build it wrong, let's say, then it might just like fly right away and run away. You know, so if it's not like spinning, you might consider something like that, right? Because otherwise it should flip if the props are on wrong and everything.
Yeah. I'm having a network problem and I don't know why. Let me just double check that it's not still happening. No. Hold on, guys. We're having a network problem. It seems fine at this moment. Sit tight for 1 second, everybody. I'm going to check, make sure I'm not, like, doing something crazy on the network by accident. It seems fine at this exact moment. No Dropbox or anything. What the hell? Oh, no. That shouldn't really matter. Huh. All right. It's fine now. That's weird. Been a long time since I had a network problem that caused me to interrupt a stream. 1 second. Let me just sleep my laptop just in case. I spent like $500 on this high-end router. It's not that high-end, but it was $500. It's from a company called Firewalla. And it's supposed to be able to do like really sophisticated load balancing. So basically my streams should never get interrupted. And usually it works pretty good, but not always great. Now my freaking laptop is being stupid. I don't know what's going on here. Control-Alt-Delete. Okay. Let's sleep. I'm going to sleep my laptop. Okay. Maybe that'll fix it. All right. Anyway, continuing. Yeah, it's just like that Twitter Spaces that they had, Elon Musk had, and just got DDoSed at the beginning because people don't want what I have to say to get out there into the world, so they DDoS my live streams.
Cut that. Cut that.
Oh no, we're at no. Sorry, we're not gonna. That's yeah. Give Blunty a heart attack. Blunty, why did we cue this? You cued this question. I have no idea what an X-Talk 2.4 gigahertz headset is. And normally I would be like, well, that has nothing to do with it, our stream. Is there a reason why you cued it that I'm overlooking?
No, in cases like that, I typically cue just in case you knew what it was. And then...
No, I have no idea.
Okay.
It's a wireless headset. No, I don't know anyone who uses it, and I'm not really sure how it relates to FPV, so thank you for the question. But moving on. ML asks, I'm trying to choose between the Boxer Crush, the Jumper T15, or the T20 as an upgrade from my Light Radio 3. So good news, I agree that all of those are an upgrade from the Light Radio 3. I would say that the... Hang on a second. I actually have all of these radios, amazingly. T20. Oh, hang on. T15. Hang on. Where's the Crush? Where's the Boxer Crush? I just did a video about it. Okay, this is confusing. I definitely own this radio. Oh, I remember. There it is. Okay. Oh, okay. Here we go. Boxer is my daily driver radio. It was the first radio, well, the first modern radio. Like the QX7 had a similar form factor, so don't say first. It was the first modern radio with this form factor, which I think is a really nice form factor. It's a little bit smaller than the T16. It has fewer, it doesn't have like as many switches and knobs. So if you need like all the switches and knobs in the world, this isn't the radio for you, but most people don't. I really like the ergonomics of this radio, and it's small, but not so small that I feel like if you give me something like the Radiomaster Zorro, it feels like really small, and I kind of don't like it. I want to feel like I'm holding an RC controller, not like a game, like an Xbox controller. But not everybody feels that way, but I do. Downside of this radio is no big color screen, okay? And by the way, the Boxer Crush, it's basically just a custom color on the Boxer. So the Boxer Crush has it's a standard Boxer with AGO1 gimbals, which is a nice upgrade. It doesn't have the metal buttons of the Boxer Max Pro. That's okay. And it comes in at kind of a middle price point. The AGO1 gimbals, I think, are a nice upgrade, not a mandatory upgrade. They do have a really nice premium feel, and I have come to really appreciate them. Just a cosmetic upgrade. You don't have to get it in hot pink. I just selected hot pink because it's the most obnoxious color that they had, and that's what I feel like doing. T20. T20 is, in my opinion, one of the best compact radios you can get today. You go with something like a Radiomaster Zorro. Oh, hang on. Yeah, buddy. That's why I keep all these radios even though I don't use them, because the ability to pull them out during a demo is really handy. Radiomaster Zorro, nice compact radio. One of the better ones. Still has the smaller gimbals, though. Of the compact radios, I think this is one of my favorites. It's big enough that the ergonomics still feel pretty good to me. It does have smaller gimbals, though, and doesn't have quite as many switches as some people would want. Whereas the T20 has all the frickin' switches in the world. So many switches. You're not really giving up anything with the T20 in terms of the number of switches and knobs you have. Full-size gimbals, although not like the ultra-premium AGO1 gimbals, so do you care? In terms of, it's not going to make you like a worse pilot, but it doesn't have quite the same feel. And, oh my god, look, the tiniest frickin' screen in the world. So, like, you can use it, but it's a little annoying. Now we come to the T15. And unfortunately, I can't power the T15 on because I need 21700 batteries. I had to order some. That's why you haven't seen me review this yet. I sat down to review this the other day and was like, oh, I don't have any 21700 cells, so I had to order 21700 cells. But it has a color touchscreen. So basically, the T15 is a radio that is essentially the exact same size as the Boxer. Not quite, but pretty freaking close as the Boxer, but with a color touchscreen, which, whoa, that's exciting. Doesn't have the AGO1 gimbals, doesn't have the premium metal CNC gimbals. Again, that's not going to like make the difference between you being a good pilot and you being a bad pilot, but you know, in terms of the flight feel, you know, sometimes it's like, I like to say that leather seats in your car won't make you a better driver. But sometimes you just like getting in your car and you're like, ooh, leather. And people pay a premium for leather seats, you know? So that's like the analogy I make for the AGO1 gimbals. They won't make you a better pilot, but... can you just pop out the bay? Does it pop out? No, it doesn't. I don't think it pops out. Does it pop out? Oh, it... Shut up. Oh my god. It just slides out. It looked to me like it was permanently affixed. It looked to me like it was glued in there, and I didn't want to break the damn thing. It just pops out. Alright, well, I feel stupid. Thanks, Joseph Dahari. I feel stupid for not thinking of that. Okay, fair enough. It was well disguised. Like, I don't know if you can see this, but the wire is tucked underneath here, so you can't easily see that it's just a battery plug. That's my, yeah. And if you were wondering, does Bardwell, like, watch other people's reviews before he reviews a product so he can, like, cheat? Well, now you can see the answer is no, because if I'd have watched anyone else's review, I'm sure I would have seen that. Anyway, moving on. So I think the T15, in terms of, like, it's similar to the Boxer in terms of the switches. In fact, I think it's exactly the same in terms of the switches you got. Looks like they have knockouts here. Can you add additional switches up here? I mean, what else could these knockouts be for except additional switches? Maybe they have a plug inside for how to do that. It looks very similar to the Boxer in terms of its functionality, but with a color touchscreen, but not quite as good at gimbals. So here's what I would say. If you want the most compact radio with the most switches, and you don't care about the tiny screen, T20. There's even a version of the T20 that has Gemini on board. In my opinion, the Boxer has the best build quality and the most sort of premium feel. Like, nothing about the Boxer to me feels cheap, especially the gimbals. And but you're going to have this smaller screen. And then the T15, it feels a little cheaper than the Boxer. And historically, Jumper's build quality hasn't been quite as good as Radio Master's. There have been no major defects in a while, though. It just hasn't quite been there. I like the folding antenna on the Jumper. I've broken my Boxer antenna several times, stuffing it in a backpack, and I kind of wish there was a nice folding antenna. But the thing is, like, this is a really high-quality antenna. I don't know what's in here. It's probably a PCB. It probably doesn't have quite as good a range. I don't know. The T15, though, has that nice color touchscreen and a nice form factor. And what I predict that, like, the T15 is such an obviously good move that, like, I predict that in the next 6 months, Radio Master will have a Boxer type radio with a big screen like the T15. And so I would be tempted to wait for that one because you'll get it with the AG01 gimbals and the, like, slightly more premium build quality. But obviously it's your decision, it's your money that you're spending today. Okay, now I have like a million radios out, and I'm just going to kind of lay them on the floor and see if I step on them later accidentally. Hopefully I won't. Yeah, Blinty.
So, the guy who asked that question earlier about the X-Talk was actually asking about how to communicate with teams on set. Like, if you're a pilot and a spotter, like, do you have any suggestions on how to use that? He was talking about the X-Talk 2.4 as a solution for that.
Oh, I mean, I have no idea what, like, a professional would use. I would be worried with 2.4 that there's going to be a lot of other shit in the 2.4 gigahertz band on set. I know that set can be very noisy, and so historically, like, 2.4 gig communications is, like, it can be not well implemented. If this is a professional product, then it could be different. Let's take another look at it. I mean, full duplex wireless intercom headset system. It does seem like it's designed for professional use. That's good. I mean, I would be curious what the range was. Multiplied. It's like, it sets up like a mesh network. I mean, I don't know anybody who's using this. That doesn't mean they're not using it. It just means I don't know anybody who's using it. 350 meters line of sight is not that freaking good. It's not that freaking good. But maybe enough for on set. And certainly between spotter and pilot, since the spotter is, by the way, FAA, if you're trying to be strictly legal, FAA requires the spotter to be co-located with the pilot. It's not enough to have the spotter in comms with the pilot. Like, you couldn't have the spotter up on top of a building with line of sight on the drone while the pilot is down on the ground. That would not be legal, according to the FAA. So really, you shouldn't need a headset for the spotter to talk to the pilot. The spotter should just be co-located with the pilot and able to speak to the pilot directly if you want to be strictly, legal according to the FAA. Which, if you're on set, you probably do. I can't speak to this system specifically. I don't know people who've used it, and I've never used it. It seems designed for the kind of thing that you want to do, though. And, like, let's see if it's ridiculously expensive. If it's ridiculously expensive, that at $200 for a set, for a pair, I'm suspicious that it's not good enough for professional use. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't go with something like an FRS radio or a GMRS radio or something like that, as opposed to some weird digital thing. But anyway, that's the best I can do. Okay, let's do Super Chats. It's well past time. We're going to start reading Super Chats until we read all the Super Chats. So if you send a Super Chat right now, your Super Chat will get read pretty promptly. We currently have like 7 or 8. Thank you, ID Drew, for a $6 Super Chat. Is a 5-inch Deadcat frame really that much worse than an X frame for freestyle? No, not really. There are small differences that some pilots can notice, especially when doing like snap rolls. A snap roll on an X frame is going to be... a snap roll on a Deadcat frame is going to have a small amount of yaw mixed in. How much yaw depends on how well the flight controller is tuned and how much authority the motors have. But if you've got a Deadcat... Bear in mind also that some Deadcat frames still have a square geometry. So if you think about it, with a Deadcat frame, you can take the front arms, you can bend them back such that the front motors are out here and the back motors are in here. And you see that you now have a parallelogram. Is that a parallelogram? No, parallel. I don't know what you have. You don't have a square, is my point. Some Deadcat frames will push the arms back and then shorten them up so the motors are still a square, okay? At that point, you have a Deadcat, but it's not really a Deadcat. You have a square geometry frame just with the nose of the quadcopter pushed out. That's fine. The place where the handling gets a little weird is if you have a true Deadcat where the front motors are wider and the rear motors are narrower. Okay. That one is going to have slight differences in handling, especially on like snap rolls, but it's not that big of a difference. And I'll bet that a lot of people, if you could find a way to blind test it, wouldn't be able to tell the difference. Okay. Goku Jayarama. Thank you for 100 rupees. I don't see a question from you, so I guess it's just a donation. And thank you for the donation. Nishant Pinto, thank you for 200 rupees. Is there a better alternative to iFlight Helion frame for long-range 10-inch? Surely there must be. And I don't want to like shit on this frame, especially because I haven't personally flown it, but my God, there's so many people online complaining about vibrations from this frame. And there are also a ton of people who love it and are having no problem with it. I acknowledge that completely. Okay? So if you're... I'm not saying the whole frame is fundamentally flawed or anything like that. Every time I complain about something or acknowledge something that has a problem, and the defenders run up to tell me that I'm overreacting or overstating it. But if you just go on Facebook and read about it, there's people who have huge problems with vibration on that frame and cannot solve them. And iFlight is being super helpful and being like, hey, download this PID tune. Hey, make these changes. And some of them say that they still haven't been able to solve it. It suggests that for at least some people, the Helion 10 frame is just like... And if this was a frame and then someone built their own drone, you could say, well, maybe the motors or maybe the flight controller, or maybe you don't know how to build. But this is a bind and fly. iFlight builds them all. They should all come from the factory, and they should all basically be correct straight out the box. Oh, well, you didn't balance the props. I don't know. I put the props that came in the box on it. If that doesn't work out of the box, then you shouldn't sell me a bind and fly. Or it should, at the very least, come with a piece of paper that says, balance the props, you dummy. I don't know. Maybe it does. So what's another good 10-inch quadcopter frame? The other thing about the Helion, or Helion, I guess is how you say it, it seems like it's designed like to look cool. Right? And it is. It's designed to look cool. And looking cool, like, okay, sure, we like to look cool. Nothing wrong with that. But I look at this and I go, was this the best way to mount the antennas? Like, just to nitpick one thing. Just to nitpick one thing. Oh, shut up. Was this the best way to mount the antennas? Or did they just do it because it looks cool? Like some kind of an animal with spikes coming off its back? Well, clearly the latter. So, you know, there are choices that were made here to make it look cool that aren't necessarily in service of, you know, the best performance. Anyway. I don't know. What's another good 10-inch frame? GEPRC Mark IV 10? Foxeer Aura 10? I don't think there's a... I don't know. What else should we pick? Reckon FPV. Reckon FPV has a good track record in long-distance drones. Yeah. Here's a Lumineer 10-inch frame. Nah, I don't know about that. I know one guy who builds with these, actually. It's like, it's a really, like, dated design. This is just, like, the Lumineer 5-inch Deadcat frame, I think it is, with big 10-inch arms. Like, this is not a super sophisticated design. But I've flown a few of these, actually, and they were okay. They were okay. I don't know. I wasn't doing cinematic shit, though. I wasn't, like, looking for Jello or something. Blunty, is the chat suggesting a frame that I should be, they're like, no, get this one. Yeah. Is there a better alternative? I guess my point is, like, I would shy away from the Helion frame because it feels like it's designed to be this sort of part of the bind and fly package, and it's got some sort of cosmetic improvement or choices that were made. And if I was building my own, I would pick something that was a little simpler. But I'm not actually sure what frame I would go for. I would have to do some research, and I haven't done that research, so I'm not comfortable making it like a recommendation for something to replace it. Does Chris Rosser have a 10-inch? It does. Okay. Oh, no, this frame pisses me off. I will never buy this frame. No matter how much Chris Rosser says it's the perfect frame. This way of putting a frame together with these little tabs and slots and vertical arms, it drives me batshit. Because the second you take the top plate off, okay, first of all, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 screws to take the top plate off. So I need to do something with the receiver or change something out. 18 freaking screws. No, thank you. And then the second I take the top plate off, all the arms fall off. Getting it back together just drives me crazy. This may be the best 10-inch frame in the world, but I wouldn't know because the way it goes together just pisses me off. But if you don't feel that way, it's probably worth a punt because Chris Rosser does design some good frames. The main criticism of Chris Rosser's frames, in my experience, is that they're not sort of designed for like real life. Like maybe they don't crash quite as well as people would hope. But with a 10-inch frame, you shouldn't be crashing the damn thing anyway, so... There you go. All right. Andy, thank you for a $10 super chat. Continuing with the super chat bonanza. I'm building a 6S quad with SpeedyBee Mario. Can I follow your build video for your JB edition for this? No, I mean, the JB beginner build? No, I mean, yes, you can follow the build video, but like obviously many of the steps will be different because you're using completely different hardware. Why don't you use... I did a build of the SpeedyBee Mario. Why don't you follow that? I did a build of the SpeedyBee Mario with those exact parts. The F405 flight controller, the Mario 5, and the 03. Yeah, follow that video. Where's my build? Yeah, this one. One sexy quadcopter, SpeedyBee Mario with VCI Hobby Motors. That's the build video. It doesn't have the Betaflight setup, so you may want to go back to my beginner build series for the Betaflight setup, and that won't be identical, but it will be pretty close, and you can probably follow along. Joseph Hayab, thank you for a $10 super chat. I have Fat Shark Dominator digital goggles. USB-C to HDMI out isn't working. Is there a setting I need to adjust? The number one setting that could be screwing you up, Joseph, is if you have the walk snail system in high frame rate. High frame rate is 100 frames per second. Many display devices can't handle 100 frames per second. They only go up to 60 FPS. So what I would do is I would set the walk snail system to standard frame rate, which is 60 FPS, and then see if that works for you. The Donnie Llama, thank you for a $10 super chat. Why does my ESC not want to work or give me the second set of beeps when I try to update the firmware on my flight controller unless I put the firmware back on the firmware it was shipped with or earlier? Donnie Llama, I don't know if we're going to be able to answer this definitively. Like, you could be flashing the wrong firmware. On some versions of Betaflight, on older versions of Betaflight, they automatically selected a motor output protocol. On later versions of Betaflight, by default, they set the motor protocol to disabled. And if you're simply flashing and you're not going to the motors tab and setting the motor protocol to D-Shot, that could explain it. I mean, I really am just guessing, though. There's any number of places this could be going wrong. And I mean, I can give you my top two guesses, but I can't be sure because we're not really in a position to go back and forth on the exact reason. Again, if you want to email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com, and then I'll be like, hey, are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you doing this? And maybe we would find the answer. Those are my best guesses, though. Craig Olson, thank you for a $10 super chat. Fourth flight on stock setup. Bardwell QAVS2 with O3 and Mambo Tracer. Failsafe is set to kill motors and tested fine. Quad dead sticked and flew away till disarm was hit. Any ideas why? Well, look, if it stopped flying when you disarmed, then it didn't fail safe. So good news. If you were in fail safe, then it wouldn't have noticed that you disarmed. So it's not a fail safe issue. That's good. And it's your fourth flight, so it was fine for a while. So it's not like you had some PID-related problem. It would be very interesting to see DVR of what happened. Right. Yeah, Blunty.
There's another way to interpret this question, which is that he's saying he flipped failsafe and it's set to kill motors and tested fine. So I wonder if he means he thinks he triggered the failsafe, or if he's saying he flipped failsafe on the radio to try to trigger it and see what happened, and it ended up flying away and he had to disarm to drop it. That's the other way I could read that. You know what I mean? Because otherwise, it's a very odd situation for him to still actually be able to disarm but have a dead stick.
So Craig, when you say failsafe is set to kill motors and tested fine, how did you test it? And then when it dead sticked, were you in the process of testing it? Or did it just spontaneously dead stick on you? Blunty, if you want to keep an eye on the chat and see if Craig responds, we'll pause that question and we'll come back to it when he answers, okay? Just interrupt me when he responds. Thank you. I don't know how I did this before I brought Blunty in as an assistant, co-producer, call screener, whatever you want. I feel like assistant doesn't give you enough credit, Blunty. I don't know. What title do you prefer?
I don't care. I'm just another dude who's here.
Just another dude. Okay, fair. Executive, assistant to the regional manager. Mike Myers asks, Bardwell, thank you for a $5 super chat, Mike. I'm not getting much range with the QAVS2 output power on Radiomaster at 1,000 milliwatts and on goggles 700 milliwatts. How can I improve my range? Mike, the first question is, which of the two things is limiting your range, video or control link? For control link, I ran into this today. There was somebody on Facebook who said, I'm only getting 600 meters out of my ExpressLRS. And the issue is that Radiomaster does this. I don't know if Jumper does this, but Radiomaster ships all their ExpressLRS radios set to 1,000 hertz. Okay? And this pisses me off. In fact, Blunty, we're going to make a live stream clip out of this. And I'm actually going to lower the overhead camera so I can put this.
Something today.
Thank you. I'm going to put this on stream. And Blunty, you're going to make a live stream clip out of it. For those who don't know, I have a live stream clips channel where Blunty cuts up clips from my live streams. It's Joshua Bardwell live stream clips. Y'all should check it out. Go subscribe over there. So it's just like highlights of the live streams for people who don't get to see the whole live stream. And this has pissed me off for a while, and I don't know why Radio Master does it. Hang on. What's going on there? Oh, come on. There we go. Okay. Focused. Okay, and overhead cam. Boom. The fuck? Why would that be no signal? That doesn't make sense. Why would you do that to me? Because it's not plugged in, you dumbass. Okay, that's my fault. Now is it gonna... Oh, now it works! Helps if you plug it in! Okay, so if you press sys, you go to ExpressLRS. Packet rate. Ta-da! Oops, not there. Packet rate. Now, I know this is super obvious to most of you guys, but I want this to be in the live stream clip. Radio Master ships the radio set to F1000. This is the lowest range. This is the super low latency for racers only. And the range is super low. Now, it's still 500 or 600 meters, okay. And it could be even more than that if you've got 1 watt of output power. But if you've got a radio with only 250 milliwatts of output power, it'll be 500 or 600 meters. But here's the thing. ExpressLRS is for long range, right? Most people, especially complete noobs, when they buy a radio, they want it to have long range. They don't give a shit about 4 millisecond latency. Okay? So they come, oh, I just got my new radio. Oh, Radio Master. Oh, my new radio. Yay, I'm going to go out and fly it. Hey. And they go out and they fly it, and they fly 500 meters away, and it falls out of the air. And they're like, this ExpressLRS thing is crap. This Radio Master radio is crap. Radio Master, why wouldn't you ship it with the packet rate set to the longest range? Why wouldn't you ship it set to 50 hertz? And here's the thing. Radio Master they're not idiots. There has to be a reason why they do this. I don't know what it is, but it doesn't make any damn sense to me. I just want to be clear that despite the fact that I'm ranting, like I think they're idiots, I don't think they're idiots. I think they're smart people who have made some decision, and I just can't see a reason to do this. So if you bought a Radio Master radio, go to the ExpressLRS Lewis script and change the packet rate. And you don't even have to change it all the way down to 50 hertz, although that will give you the longest range. You can change it. I run at 250 hertz, and in my experience, that gives a really good balance of range and latency. But, like, don't leave it at 1,000 hertz.
Just a bonus reason not to do this. If you have an SPI whoop, you can't bind with it. F1000.
That's right. That's the other problem. The F packet rates like F1000 can't bind to SPI receivers. And SPI receivers are on the way out, but they're still out there. And so you'll buy this radio and you're like, it won't bind to my tiny whoop. Why would Radio Master do this? I don't know. I think it's a bad decision, and I think they shouldn't do it. And I think I mentioned this to them once. And then they replied and they were like, yeah, here's why we do it. And I was like, well, I don't agree, but, agree to disagree, with all due respect. And then I saw this post on Facebook this morning from a person who was like, I just bought this brand new radio and the range sucks. I thought ExpressLRS was supposed to have good range. What the hell? That's how I imagine their voice. And it was like they were set to F1000, and it reminded me of this issue all over again, and now I've ranted about it, and we'll put it up on the Livestream Clips channel, so hopefully the world can benefit from my anger.
Okay, let's go back to Craig.
Yes. Okay, Craig Olson. Go ahead, Blunty.
Okay, he says, flight was normal. In hover, right before landing, it stopped responding to any stick movement.
But it disarmed.
Then it disarmed. That seems crazy. Do you think it's possible it like flew away and then gave him a runaway? Well, it wouldn't be.
The timing of the disarm.
Yeah.
Joseph Dahari, is what you're posting in the Discord related to this issue? I don't know if we can possibly troubleshoot this because like it stopped responding to stick movement suggests that it's not a failsafe. Well, you would think it was a failsafe, but if it was a failsafe, it would just disarm itself after a second, unless you had like GPS rescue or something set up. But the fact that it disarmed when you disarmed it means it wasn't on failsafe.
All right, so like, chat's listing a couple random things, like, if you put your profiles on a switch and accidentally flip something, maybe you got way too close to the radio, you don't have dynamic power on, and you blasted and you got a micro failsafe, because that does happen if you get too close to the receiver. You'd have to be very close, but that is something that does happen.
Wouldn't it reconnect, though?
Right, that's why he was able to disarm. That's what I was...
You think it reconnected? But if it reconnected, he would have stick movement. He would know that he had control. Yes. It's a weird one. That's a weird one.
Yep. It's a weird one.
So, Craig, this is weird. I don't know if we're going to be able to troubleshoot it. It's going to be guesswork. If you had DVR with OSD, that would be helpful. Because we might be able to get information from the DVR and from the OSD as to what was happening. But I'm not... it's weird, and if I were you, I would be careful about how and where I flew my quadcopter on the chance that this happened again and I lost control. Anytime there's a potential for you to lose control of the aircraft, you need to be super careful about how you fly it because there's a risk of losing it. I don't think he fail-safed it, though. Like, he was landing. How far away was he from himself at the moment when he was landing? And if he landed, why was the fail-safe behavior to fly away and not to just drop out of the air? Has he changed his fail-safe settings to be auto-land or something? I feel like we're missing information here, and I don't know if we're going to get it. So, yeah, if he had return to home, that could explain it. If he had GPS with return to home, that would explain maybe why it tried to fly away.
Yeah, just the original question had that he has already set failsafe to kill motors, but it is possible it's set up incorrectly or some of the staging is wrong or something.
Yeah. Okay, continuing with the super chats. Looking for a good antenna to connect a Radiomaster receiver to a ground station. A good antenna for the receiver? The factory antennas that they come with are more than enough. Good antenna for a ground station? I mean, you want to high get? Like, what's your sort of mission profile? Werewolf Tactical antenna selection has to do with where you need coverage versus where the drone is going to be. Okay? You can certainly just put the same antenna that's on the radio. Just buy one of these antennas and put it on your ground station, and you'll get omni connection. Pond Racer says, would there be a fail-safe option to fly back to the transmitter location? No, Pond Racer, you're just making stuff up at this point. Like, would there be an option to have it contact the aliens and tell them that it's fail-safed, and then the aliens will use their quantum teleportation technology to teleport it back into the pilot's backpack? That's equivalent to what you suggested. What you suggested doesn't exist in Betaflight. So, I mean, let's not spend time just making up things that don't exist and then wondering whether that's the cause of the problem. Let's focus on things that we know exist, or if we don't know, then we'll just wait for people who do know to answer the question. I kind of sound like an asshole at the moment, but it really bugs me. It drives me crazy. It drives me crazy when people are trying to help, for which my heart goes out to you, because the number one thing in order to help people, the first thing you have to do is give a shit. And if you don't give a shit, I don't judge you. There's too much stuff going on in the world for you to give a shit about all of it. So, like, people see someone who needs help, and the first thing they do is they give a shit, and they're like, I'm going to try to help. But then what they do is they just say things that are made up. Yeah, my car won't start. Oh, well, did you check what phase of the moon it is? What sun sign is your car? Is the door open? Sometimes my car won't start when the door's open. And you're like looking at it going, what are you talking about? None of this has anything to do with why his car won't start. So, like, if you're going to be helpful, like, be helpful. You know, don't just, like, speculate randomly. I see this on Reddit all the time. It drives me crazy.
I'll just say, the reason is not because it's not okay that you're trying to help. It's that you're wasting time. Like, you're wasting somebody's time. Like, somebody doesn't know that you know or doesn't know. And so they might spend 5 minutes Googling it or 30 minutes trying to change settings in Betaflight to do something that you asked about. So it might be harmless and you may be making a suggestion. You should just be super clear that you are new, that you don't really know, and that sort of thing in the thing if you want to make a suggestion. That's all. It's not, nobody's like, chat's like, you don't have to be mean about it, but the whole point is that we're trying not to have people's time wasted. We're trying to get everybody's stuff fixed. That's all.
Right.
You know?
Right. We're just trying to be helpful.
One thing I did when I was new, which I think is really helpful, is to guess at what the answer to the problem is and then see what other people say and what the actual answer results in. And when you get like 5 of those right in a row, then you can start answering people. Yeah. That's sort of where I'm at with it,
well, I think what people do is they want to be helpful and they look around. Like if you and I are stuck on a desert island and we need to build a boat to get off the desert island, neither of us knows how to build a boat. But fuck it. Nobody else is on the island with us, right? Either we're building the boat or we're dying on the island. I guess we're going to build a boat. So I'm going to be like, hey, bro, how do we build a boat? And you're going to be like, I don't know. I guess we get chop down some trees. And I'll be like, sounds good to me. But the point is that at this moment, the only people who are here who are most equipped to answer the question are us two idiots. But as soon as there's one guy on the island who's ever built a boat before, we need to shut the fuck up and do what he says. And I think what happens is, like on Facebook and Reddit, people see a question get asked and they just go, I don't know, I guess I'm the smartest guy in the room. I don't really know, but here's my thought about it. And what they don't realize is there's other people in the room who actually know about the topic. And before you just pitch a wild ass answer, you need to look around and go, is there anybody here who's smarter than me? No? You guys are all idiots too? All right, well, fuck it. Here's my opinion. Go for it. Anyway. But take 5 minutes to look around. I see like they're like, well, what's compound interest? I don't really understand compound interest and how mortgages work. And somebody will be like, well, I guess it works like this. And then there's like a dude who's an investment banker and an accountant. And he's like telling the answer. And then there's just some jackass who was like, I don't know, when I got a mortgage, it was 3%. And every month it went up and up and up. And boy, it sure cost me a lot of money. Anyway, that's how it works. I'm like, you have contributed nothing to this conversation. We are all dumber for having read your comment. Okay, moving on. Back to the Super Chats. Little rant there for the Livestream Clips channel. Werewolf Tactical. I'm going to look and see if Werewolf actually responded. No, he didn't. We need to know what your mission profile is. Where's the quad going to be flying? But basically, just go buy yourself a 2.4 gigahertz or a 900 megahertz antenna with a beam width that will suit the flight area that you want to be in and use that. Okay.
You said they need to fly 4 miles.
4 miles? How many kilometers is that? 6 kilometers. I mean, you could do 6 kilometers on the stock antenna. You don't need anything fancy. 1 watt output power, stock antenna, holding a boxer in your hand. If you're going to do a ground station that you elevate the antenna, like on principle, you should probably get like a 9 dB or Yagi or something, but you don't need to. With 1 watt output power, ExpressLRS 2.4 gig or 900 megahertz, even more, will go 6 kilometers without even really breaking a sweat. So I only know distances in kilometers when it comes to ExpressLRS range. Ben Masters says, salvaging parts from 2 5-year-old drones. One went underwater, one had a speed controller light on fire. How to check if the motors are going to fry a new ESC. I mean, start with the smoke stopper. And if the smoke stopper instantly trips the minute you apply power, then the ESC or the motor may be damaged. I guess that's what I would do. You can't really test motors with a multimeter because the motors will have a short circuit between the phases by design, and without like an impedance meter or a milliohm meter, you can't really test to see. You could test the kV. There's a method you could use. It may not be worth the trouble, but what you do is this: you get a drill. And you chuck the motor shaft in the drill, and you spin the drill at full throttle, okay? And full throttle on the drill is going to be about the same RPM. Like, obviously, if you have a dead battery and a full battery, then the drill's going to spin at different speeds, so don't do that. And you take a multimeter and you measure AC volts across 2 of the wires coming out of the motor. And you spin the drill, and you're going to measure a certain number of AC volts. Say it's 2 volts. I don't know what it would be. And then what you do is you check the other phase of the motor. So you've got 3 wires. You'll go 1 to 2 and 1 to 3. And you'll check the AC volts as you spin the motor at a fixed RPM. And then you test the next motor the same way. And what you should see is that the volts coming out of the motor is about the same. It relates to the kV of the motor. The faster you spin the motor, the higher the voltage. But you're spinning at a fairly consistent RPM by just going to full throttle, okay? And if you test the motors and the motors test 2 volts, 2 volts, 2 volts, 2 volts, 10 volts, or 1 volt, or 0.5 volts, if one of the numbers is way off, then that motor's probably screwed up. Okay. Mike Myers is using Fat Shark goggles and the Walksnail HD Pro Kit camera. Oh, this goes back to the question about goggles. But again, Mike doesn't say whether his... we talked about that. Mike, you still haven't said whether your Radio Master or your goggles are the limitation. I'm guessing it's the goggles, though. So Mike Myers, to circle back to your question, set the Radio Master to the lowest packet rate you can. And on the goggles, I mean, that's a tougher one. I wonder how much range you're getting. Chris FPV, I don't remember it being in millivolts. Like, I guess it depends on how fast your drill is spinning. Like, well, okay. Can I find this video?
I'm Joshua Bardwell.
I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Oh, look at me. So young and wholesome.
Did you know that
Did you know? I don't know. Look at this nerd. Okay, sorry. Here, how many volts did I get?
Base part. You got to measure them carefully in my hand. You'll see the voltage will rise
Yeah, so it's like half a volt.
until I reach full RPMs, 2400 RPMs.
Yeah, it's like half a volt.
Just
That's not millivolts. That's like half a volt. That's plenty of volts. Anyway, it's like a 3000 kV motor. Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I got distracted. There was a response to what we were just talking about. What were we talking about before that? Sorry, I'm queuing up question.
Testing if motors are bad.
The goggles.
The goggles.
He says it's
Mike
right in front of
Myers.
him, but he loses signal.
Oh, that's not right. No. So, Mike, your problem is not, how can I get more range out of my system? Your problem is your system is effed up. And you got to figure out why. Like, if you literally lose video right in front of you, something isn't right. You know?
You've done ham unlock, right? In the channel, like, so
Yeah,
you
but
have
even
all
with ham
channel-
unlock, how far should he get? Like, he's at 25
Yeah.
milliwatts. He shouldn't lose. Like, when he says right in front of him, do you mean literally?
It's not far in front of me. That's what he said. So
Yeah, something's wrong. I mean, we need to dig into your system and your setup. Like, for example, is it going out of low power mode when you arm? Maybe the flight controller, he says he doesn't lose video. Maybe the flight controller MSP connection is not set up right and it's staying in low power mode. Arshan's edit says the simplest way to check a motor is by measuring resistance between the phases. Yes, but that resistance is measured in milliohms, and a typical multimeter can't do it. So you need a milliohm meter in order to do that, which most people don't have.
Also, just to be clear, that doesn't actually check a motor all the way. So you can have an internal failure that's like, if you don't have if it's not shorted to ground and they're not imbalanced, you still have to use like if you do commercial, for instance, you would have to use a megger on that to actually know if it's working, because you have to put power through the coils to know if they're going to fail with power.
If they're shorted, I mean, the real way to do it is to measure the inductance, right? That's definitive.
Right. But power with a megger.
What's a megger?
It puts mega ohm. It's like a mega ohm. That's what they call it in HVAC. It's a megger. You just hook the motor up to it, and then you run it, and it can tell you if a motor's bad because it puts a load on the motor.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting. I mean, a milliohm meter will show if two phases are shorted, whether they're shorted to ground or shorted to each other.
Yes.
If there's an internal short in the motor, it'll find it.
Yes, and it'll tell you if you're imbalanced, like you can do 2 and then check the third, and they should add up to each other, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but there are cases I've seen where that is all still good, and then the motor's bad, and you can tell with the megger. It's just something to know.
Blunty, you knows a thing or two about motors from your HVAC work, I think.
Yes, compressors die a lot.
Yeah. Okay. John Phillips, thank you for a $5 super chat. Mike Myers, I don't want to leave you hanging. Email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com. My guess is that you've got either a setup problem where it's not actually going to full power, like you're not coming out of low power mode, or like your antenna is broken. But you could test that by just testing multiple quads. It could also be a problem with your goggle antenna, I suppose. But I think it requires a little bit more back and forth than we're going to be able to do on the stream, and I'm happy to do that with you over email. John Phillips asks, my HD0 goggles are updated and work well. Oh, great. Thank you for this donation, John. We will be moving on to the next question. Oh, wait, there's more? But will randomly record in TS instead of MP4 without me changing my procedure or my settings. Any ideas? No, I've never heard of that. I've never heard of that happening. And I think I would have to contact HD0 support because that sounds like a bug. That isn't a setting. It should never record in TS as far as I know if you've got it set to MP4. I don't know why it would ever do that. That's funny. Joseph Dahari is like, now that Bardwell's got a tattoo, it's thug life all the way. Amale asks, I hope I've said your name even somewhat close to correct. Thank you for 50 Czech Koruna. How much does your 8S weigh from the video? I'm at 866 grams, 6S 5-inch. I want to be like 670 grams. 866 grams, and I want to be agile like a 670 grams. I see. Okay, so I'm not going to promise you that it's going to fly like a 700 gram quad, but a heavy aircraft that needs more agility is in fact like the ideal use case for going from 6S to 8S. So if you're like, there are all kinds of places where people will go, should I go to 8S? And I'd be like, nah, you don't really need to. 6S is fine. Like if you're a racer, 6S is already probably too fast for you. Like racers doing 6S, there are a lot of times that they're at 1800, 1900 kV. They're not at 2200 kV because that extra power, they just make them crash faster. They don't have the reflexes to fly that fast. Some racers do, but many don't. So for racers like that, do you need to go to 8S? No. But someone with a 900 gram quad that they want to feel more like a 700 gram quad is in fact the perfect use case for 8S. So I 100% would go for it. I would get myself a set of 1500 kV motors, or even maybe stick with my 1800 kV motors and just use an RPM limit, although that wouldn't be quite as good. And I would give it a try. Joseph Hayab says I solved his problem. Oh, it was the high frame rate to the USB out. Thank you for a $2 super chat, Joseph, and very glad we solved your problem. ID Drew asks, €6 super chat. Thank you, Drew. Nazgul Evoke F5V2 has 2 antennas for the O3, but some said it's the wrong polarization for the Goggles 3. Is that true? Yes, but it probably doesn't matter. So the DJI Goggles 3 have linear antennas, but iFlight ships it with circular polarized antennas. Technically, this does cause a small amount of polarization loss, but most people find that the result is fine. And the reason for that is, if you've got 2 linear antennas, okay? If the 2 antennas are both oriented straight up and down, then there is no polarization loss. Woo, that's good. That's what I want. If I have a circular polarized antenna and a linear polarized antenna, there is 3 dB, roughly, 3 dB of polarization loss, regardless of their relative orientations. Just a fixed 3 dB of loss. Okay, so obviously linear to linear is better. No, not necessarily. If I have 2 antennas that are mounted on a building, yes, linear to linear is better. And I'm going to just rotate those antennas so they are always oriented exactly the same. But if I have an antenna on a drone where it's just pivoting and flipping and rolling, then those antennas are not always optimally oriented because the drone is moving. And technically, so is your head a little bit. And the polarization loss for cross-polarized linear antennas can be up to like 15 dB. So I kind of don't even know what DJI's thought process was going with linear. But obviously, DJI knows what they're doing. Like, it wasn't a mistake. They're smart, and their drones work great, and their radio links work great. So I'm not complaining. But when you look at the iFlight, and it has circular antennas, and the DJI has linear, it's not a given that that's going to give you less range. In many situations, it's going to give you a little better range, just depending on how the polarization bounce is happening. Seven, thank you for a $13 super chat. Any tips for soldering tiny watt pads with a half circle cutout, sort of a crescent moon shape? I haven't found any videos demonstrating it. So, Seven, what I would do, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate this for you on the stream, obviously, because I'm not set up to do that. But what I would do is I would tin the pad, as always, so the pad is kind of like full up with solder. If the crescent moon, here, hang on. I already set up the overhead cam. Let's just use it. So if the crescent moon looks like this, I would lay the wire in kind of like this, okay? And of course, the crescent moon is going to kind of be full up with solder because I've tinned it. So the wire is going to kind of press up against the solder. And then I would hit it with the soldering iron kind of coming in from the side and gently applying a little bit of pressure so that as it flowed, it kind of just doink, set in there. And that's how I would do it. I don't know if that's helpful, but hopefully it is. Andy, thank you for a $5 super chat. Regarding the SpeedyBee Mario 5 build, I meant following the Betaflight configuration. Yeah, you can follow the Betaflight configuration in principle, but you need to know that the exact steps are going to be different. Like, you'll go to the ports tab just like I did, and you'll set up your receiver just like I did, but yours may be on UART 2 and mine was on UART 4 or something like that, and you just need to kind of be able to extrapolate. But 100% you can follow along with those steps as long as you kind of just engage your brain and realize that just like rotely following the exact steps I did won't work because we use different hardware. All right. Oh my God, that's all the super chats. Great. We can go back to the regular chats now. Let's do it.
68 questions in chat.
Oh my God, 68 questions in the chat. Wow. Well, I better get on it. Let me look. First of all, I'm going to look to see if there's questions from people on the Discord. These people are my patrons. They do subscribe to me on Patreon, and it makes sense to give them a tiny bit of priority as a thank you. right? So let's see here. We got a question here from D. Madden who asks, thinking about going on holiday to Norway for diving, mountains, waterfalls, cinematic shots. I only have a 3.6-inch 4S walk snail quad and no long-range experience. Is this feasible, or am I going to do something stupid? D. Madden, I would discourage you from trying to mountain fly with a 3.6-inch. It's just not going to have the endurance. Like, the small props mean that it's not going to have the flight time. And I know that there are people out there who build like long-range 4 inches with long flight time. Okay. That's going to put you in a... First of all, you don't have that. That 3.6-inch quad that you have is not a long-range, high-endurance quad. So it's not going to give you the flight time you need to get to the top of the mountain and then fly around and come back home. You need, like, let's say 15 or 20 minutes of flight time minimum to do mountain cruising. Obviously, it depends on the mountain. But at the end of the day, you're going to fly up a mountain and you're going to fly back down again, and that takes time. But the other thing is, even if you had like a 4-inch long-range ultralight bird, the wind is just going to blow you around. As soon as you get up there, you're just going to get tossed around by the wind. You're going to be fighting the wind the whole time. Your endurance is going to go to shit, and you're just not going to have a good time. If you said, I've never done long-range before, and I'm going to go cruise the mountains, like, obviously there has to be a first time for something, right? And as long as you were smart about it, I wouldn't like promise you were going to lose the quad. Like, you would have to be very careful. Like, the mistake that people make the first time they go mountain cruising is they fly up the mountain. Great. And then they get to the top of the mountain and they're like, ooh, if I make a right turn, I can follow this cool ridge. And they're following the ridge line. And then they accidentally fly behind another mountain and video's gone and they fail safe and they never see their quad again. So, like, what I would say the first time you do mountain cruising is, well, I would start with a relatively small mountain and I would fly up it and back down again following the same route so that I was sure to keep video, right? And I would sort of slowly work out from that. But I honestly think the minimum size aircraft that you would want for mountain cruising is like a 7-inch or maybe a 6-inch. But I think a 7-inch is where you start being really feasible because the resistance to wind and the flight times of smaller drones just aren't well suited to mountain cruising. Okay. Let's see. Got another one in the Discord here from Pocket Jazzy, who asks, the V-Fly Smokesaver 2 should be used after the flight controller is wired, and we should hear all motors and FC tones when booting up. But what if you also have a high-powered VTX wired up? Can that cause a false positive? Yes. The high-powered VTX can trip the smoke stopper and defeat the purpose of the smoke stopper. I don't know about a capacitor, maybe, but I don't think so. So, like, if you really care about this, then you might need to unplug the VTX to test with the smoke stopper. I don't know. Like, I haven't seen very many, like, 5-inch and 7-inch builds where the VTX trips the smoke stopper reliably. Sometimes you have to set the smoke stopper on the 2 amp setting, but generally it works okay. It's usually gigantic honkin' X-Class motors that the motor beeps pull enough current that they trip the smoke stopper. I got another question here from JD Jacob, who is also a patron in the Discord. Thank you guys for your support. JD Jacob asks, I just got a job at a groundbreaking ceremony where my 7-inch drone will lift up some streamers outlining the future building's walls. Any advice for this? Where I will have a fishing line tied to the bottom of the drone. JD Jacob, should go without saying, but practice this before the day of the ceremony so that you figure out the ways in which it's going to screw up. JD Jacob here has a drawing. Thank you, Blunty, for posting that. Has a drawing of what this is going to look like. Is this attached to the ground? Blunty, do you have any idea?
That appears to be the case, yeah. I think he's got 2 stakes there. He's going to hook all that stuff up and then fly the drone straight up to be the third leg hanging. Practice this before the day of the ceremony. I hope it goes without saying.
Like, my number one concern would be getting tangled, although that's probably pretty well solvable. And then my number two concern is, if this is a beta flight drone, are you going to just hover it manually for however long the ceremony takes? Like, I would 1000% want this to be with some kind of a drone, at least iNav, maybe DJI, where I could hover it in place and not have to constantly be flying it. If this didn't have GPS position hold, this is going to be a freaking nightmare. And then I would want to test it to make sure I'm going to have enough battery life to support the weight for the length of time of the ceremony. Those are some gotchas. Don't get it tangled. Make sure that it's going to be able to fly for the length of time you need while carrying the weight that it's carrying. Because obviously, like, how much do these streamers weigh? Well, it's not nothing. And then, by God, do this with something with position hold so you don't have to fly it manually for the whole time. DeMadden, thank you for being a patron. I got a RunCam Thumb Pro wired to my flight controller via UART. Can I display the recording status in the OSD? No, you can't. Betaflight, when you trip that switch to cause the camera to start recording, there's no feedback as far as I know. It just says, hey, start recording, and then, like, I guess I hope it worked. But, like, no, never mind. The RunCam Thumb Pro. There are some RunCam hybrid cameras where the high definition camera is also the FPV camera, and you can see a recording indicator in the screen. But the Thumb Pro isn't like that, so never mind. One way that people have solved this problem in the past is, you're not going to like this, but what you do is you take a fiber optic light pipe and you affix the fiber optic light pipe to the status LED on the camera. How do you do that? I don't know. 3D printing, glue, spit and tape. I don't know. But your fiber optic light pipe pipes it around so you can see in the camera view that the LED is flashing. It's totally a kludge, but it does work. I don't think there's a way to do it in software. Do the preset tunes work on Deadcat frames as well as on XCat frames? Thank you, Cap C, for being a patron. Yes. The preset tunes I don't think are highly specific to the X versus Deadcat situation. Obviously, they're not going to work the same on every frame. Some frames will work better than others, but I don't think it's the motor geometry that's going to make the difference. Flo the Joe, thank you for being a patron. Continuing to clear out some questions from those in the Discord. Why is it so hard to desolder the motors on the Nautical V2? I heated it with 450 Celsius and it still won't move an inch. Flo the Joe, my guess is that is lead-free solder from the factory and it doesn't want to flow. The number one thing you can do is put some flux on it. Add flux before you solder. Number two thing you can do is add a little bit of fresh leaded solder. So put a little fresh, act like you're going to resolder it. Heat it, put flux on it, heat it with the soldering iron tip, and then feed a little fresh leaded solder in, and the factory stuff should let go pretty easily. I want to take this question from Zimic, because anytime anybody asks about being a patron, you're thinking about signing up. Well, let me pay attention to you. Zimic asks, if I subscribe to Patreon, is a constant subscription required to be in the server, or will I be removed if I stop subscribing certain months? Zimic, once you subscribe to the server, you are not automatically kicked out if your subscription, if you like pause or cancel your subscription, but almost all of the channels on the server are exclusive to patrons. So basically, you'll have access to just like one channel on the server that's the sort of dump channel for people who are somehow on the server but aren't patrons. So essentially, you'll lose access to the server if you're not an active patron in any given month, but you won't be kicked out. Zimic has had a few questions. Did any of them get queued? Do you have any thoughts on the Cetus X as a 2S whoop? Zimic, I have only flown the Cetus on 1S, right? That's what it comes with from the factory. So no, I don't. But Since you were asking about being a patron, I thought I would give you a little extra attention. Okay, enough of that. Continuing on. Subi in the Discord asks, what are your thoughts on the iFlight Bob 5.7 with Crossfire and the TBS Tango? So the iFlight Bob 5.7 is a pretty decent mid-range cruiser. Yeah. I do know that for a while people were complaining that they couldn't get spare parts for it, and were complaining that iFlight hadn't published the 3D prints for it. Now, I don't know if that's still true. So iFlight sells the parts. That's not what people wanted, though. There are some parts here. I don't know if they're the official parts. Oh, here's the side plates. Who's publishing these? Is it iFlight? Luke Man, no, it's not. I don't know. So maybe that issue's been resolved. I don't think this is inherently, like, if you're like, oh, I kind of like the look of the Bob 5.7, I don't think there's any deal breakers on it. And the intended use of, I mean, they say it's for long range. That may be true. But if your intended use is mid-range, it's going to be just fine. Should have brought a drink this time. Oh well, we only got a half hour left. CBR from Hell asks, I'm having major issues soldering to the ESC. I've used flux, more temp, less temp. I'm not sure what's going on. I have solder that's adhered to the ESC and I can't even heat it up to remove it. I like what you're describing is not enough heat getting into the pad. I can't say whether that's your technique or whether that's your iron, because obviously I'm not looking over your shoulder. In my experience, sometimes people are using a crappy iron that isn't able to get the pad hot. A lot of times people are using a very small, thin tip, and they need to have a bigger, thicker tip for those big pads. A lot of times people are not using flux. You are using flux, so that's good. You need to be using leaded solder. That will help. And then you need to just apply heat until the solder flows. Like sometimes people are not making good contact, or they're not waiting long enough for it to heat up. Your tip needs to be clean and not oxidized. Unfortunately, there's like a million things that can cause this, and there's no way for me to know which of them is affecting you without like being able to see your setup. But those are some of the things I would check. Okay. We'll do, we got 2 more questions from the patrons, and then we'll continue on. When are you planning to do a review on the Manta 5 Pro drone? I have no plans to review that drone. I don't know. Like, I get it. That's a drone that you're interested in. Wait, is it interesting? I don't know. It's a 5-inch. It looks cool. I have no specific plans to review this. So that's the answer. Breacher Cat asks, how likely or what scenario would a motor kill an ESC or an ESC kill a motor, and how to diagnose? I burned a motor that killed the ESC, then the faulty ESC killed my new motor. My faulty motor killed the new... Yes, that is possible. It's not super likely, but it is possible. So, you know, maybe start over from scratch with a new ESC and a new motor. Okay, here's the last patron question from Heimdall, who asks, I have a SkyZone Sky 04 I'm planning to get the Walksnail VRX. Can it record 100 FPS on board while still viewing at 60 FPS because of the limitation of the goggles? Heimdall, good news. The Walksnail DVR is always recorded at 60 FPS. So the answer to your question is that Walksnail DVR doesn't record in 100 FPS ever, regardless of whether you're doing HDMI output. This was a real disappointment to me when I very first started reviewing the Walksnail system because I wanted to show the 100 FPS footage in my review. So I went out and I found like the one capture card in the world, at least as far as I know, that can record 720p 100. And I did HDMI out into the capture card. I recorded 720p 100 so I could upload my review and let you guys see how different the 100 FPS footage looked. And it turns out that YouTube doesn't support high frame rate either. So it was all for nothing. YouTube just downsampled the video to 60 FPS. And then I just quit my job. Okay. Let's take some questions from people who aren't patrons for a little bit now. Just some YouTube chat questions. We'll cycle through here. Chris Brock, if you're getting RSSI, so RSSI low warning you can almost always ignore because the default Betaflight RSSI threshold is not correct for ExpressLRS. What you really need to do is look at LQ, link quality. And if the link quality is below, let's say, 80, then that's an issue. But if the link quality is over 80, and especially if it's over like 90 or 95, then just ignore those warnings. That's what I would say. The EP2 receiver with the ceramic antenna is going to get slightly reduced range. Depending on where you mount it in the frame, maybe significantly reduced range. And if you're at 1000 hertz, and if you're only at like 250 milliwatts, then those things can add up to reduced range. So what I would do is make sure your radio is at max power with whatever it can do. Set your packet rate to 50 hertz, and then look at LQ in the OSD. Don't look at RSSI or SNR, and if the LQ is staying high, then don't worry about those warnings. Single antenna or dual antenna for the O3 Air unit. The O3 Air unit was designed to work with two antennas. You should use it with two antennas. The single antennas are actually dual antennas. If you look at them, they have two UFL connectors coming out of them. They are inside a single housing, but it's two antennas. Always use the O3 with two antennas as God or DJI, depending on how you look at it, intended. iFlight Nazgul 5-inch versus the GepRC 5-inch. The Nazgul Eco is the best value for money in FPV today. It's $215 without a receiver. You add a receiver. It's hard to find anything less expensive, and it's a really good value. The GepRC 5-inch, I think in a lot of ways, I prefer the way that GepRC has approached the build to the way iFlight has approached the build. Well, that's not true for the Eco. It's a more traditional build. I'm not sure which is better. They're both really good. I guess the iFlight wins on price. Palapoika. In my opinion, Palapoika, a 3.5-inch is going to fly just a little bit more like a bigger quad than a 3-inch. As in the 250-gram size, to me, 3.5-inch is just about perfect. There are people who prefer the smaller props because they like a higher disc loading. What that means is that if you take the disc area of the prop, right, the circumference times pi, whatever, and then you take the weight of the drone and divide it over the disc area, that predicts kind of how floaty the quad is going to be. And some people find that they feel that the disc loading of a 3-inch is preferable. It's less floaty, it's a little bit shorter flight time, but it feels a little bit more like a bigger quad. Personally, I like 3.5-inch, and yes, 1604 motors are going to be fine for 3.5 or 3-inch. In fact, they may be just a little bit big for a 3-inch at the 250 gram size. Can you fix a bricked flight controller? Yes. You put it in DFU mode with the bootloader button and flash it. If it's like truly like destroyed, then that won't bring it back. I have to answer this question that just came in. Which is stronger, the Bot Grinder Demibot or the TBS Source 1 V3? I mean, come on. The Demibot is specifically designed as a Bando Basher frame. The Source 1 V3 is just a general purpose freestyle frame and not a particularly durable one. Look at the thickness of the arms on the Source 1 versus the Demibot. Right? Right? Like, what's the thickness of the arms? 6mm arms on the Demibot. Arm thickness. 4mm arms on the Source 1 V3. That's all you need to know. Top plate 3mm. Top plate 2mm. Bottom plate 3mm. Oh, there you go. Bottom plate 3mm. Like, I'm not saying that's the only thing that matters, but like the Demibot 6mm arms, 4mm arms on the Source 1 V3, that's it. Demibot's going to win for durability unless they've just completely effed up the design, which they haven't. It's kind of like asking, which vehicle is better for towing my camper? A Mazda Miata or a Ford F-150? Like, one of them is designed to do the thing you're asking about and one isn't. Armin Terabellion asks, are there any fine chicks flying FPV? We're going to put Armin in timeout because I have the woke mind virus. That means that I don't think it's appropriate to just charge into a room and go, hey, any sweet chicks here looking to meet up and fly FPV? Like, pretend to not be a sleazeball. Come on. Fine chicks. Any fine chicks. No uggos allowed. Right? Am I right? I don't care about the uggos who fly FPV. Only the fine chicks. The fine ladies. And we wonder why there aren't more women in FPV. I don't wonder. You know, if you are interested in fine chicks flying FPV, though, can I introduce you to Fly Tribe Magazine? Fly Tribe Magazine, that's not a fine chick. I think you know. But hold on. First page! Hello. Fly Tribe Magazine goes out of their way to, I know they do this on purpose. It can't be an accident. Fly Tribe Magazine, I have a lot of respect that they go out of their way to highlight women who do participate in FPV. There aren't a lot of them. And sometimes I feel like maybe they don't get as much representation as maybe they should. So I notice that, here's what I notice. As I flip through Flytribe Magazine, I see way more women in Flytribe Magazine than I do in real life at FPV events. And that means that they're going out of their way to raise the profile of women who participate in FPV. And I think that's commendable. because like if I were to go to an event and I look around at the event and everyone at the event looks different than me and seems like they are different than me, then I'm going to feel out of place and I'm going to feel kind of unwelcome, no matter how welcome people might try to make me feel. And then if people didn't go out of their way to make me feel welcome and said things like, "Hey, any fine chicks flying around here?" then I would feel especially unwelcome. And so part of the way that we branch out and in who feels welcome in FPV is to raise the profile of people, and women are people, last I checked. So I really respect what they're doing, what I think they're doing, which is they're saying, hey, look, we all know it's 98% dudes out there, but there are women who do this, and for other women who might be involved in wanting to get involved, we're going to make sure that people know they exist, and we represent them too, and I dig it. So, from a off-color comment that maybe didn't need to be made, to a positive message, Fly Tribe Magazine, you can subscribe. It's a bi-monthly magazine about FPV, and it's fucking amazing. Now I'm looking to see if there's any horrible, horrible sexist comments in my chat that I need to shake my fist at and want to... Anyway, unalive myself because the world is like this. Hey, I didn't mean anything by it. I'm sure you didn't. And then we'll find out if Blunty decides to make that into a live stream clip. What do you think, Blunty? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I don't know.
You're just gonna be like, I don't need that smoke. I can see it.
Yeah.
Bardwell reacts to fine chicks in FPV. That would get a lot of views, Blunty. You got to admit. Pond Racer says, and include the disabled as well. I'll say, but I don't want to just keep beating this drum, but I will. I do agree. I think one of the most inspiring aspects of FPV is the way that it allows people who lack physical mobility to experience motion and flight and speed and freedom. And I'm not just like making that up and projecting it on disabled people. I've heard this many times from people who have a physical disability of some kind. And I find it really inspiring. And I've also noticed that Fly Tribe Magazine goes out of their way to like represent these people as part of the FPV community. So, okay, super chats. We got about 10 minutes left in the stream. Brandon Fannin, thank you for a $10 super chat. Just watched your Flylens 85 review. I'm getting a fair amount of prop wash on mine with the PID SAS tune from Flywoo. Haven't made the 03 naked, but it could be an issue as simple as that. Yes, Brandon, you didn't get to see me fly the non-naked 03 very long because I accidentally smoked the ESC very shortly into the flight. I will say that the non-naked 03, even though it's like only like whatever 13 grams heavier, it flew significantly worse. And I'm not telling you to nakedize your 03 because there's a step in the nakedizing where if you do it wrong, you just destroy the 03. And I've heard multiple people who are like, I'll do it. How hard could it be? And then they just destroy their 03. If you decided to go this way, I would consider just buying a naked 03 from Flywoo and putting it on that quad and then saving your other 03 for something else. But it flies significantly better than the non-naked one. I don't know for sure, but I would say there's a chance. Yeah. What are your thoughts on RunCam selling an open IPC-based setup and also Emacs? Thank you for a $5 super chat, Dave K. Dave, I'm glad you asked that. I've always said that open IPC is a fascinating, for those who don't know, open IPC. Hello. Open IPC is an open source project targeting firmware for IP cameras, but there's a project that is making an open IPC-based FPV system. This website, Mario... Oh, no music. Please, no copy strikes. This website, this YouTube channel, rather, Mario FPV is one of the sort of faces of the project to YouTube anyway. I don't know what their exact role is in the project, but when new OpenIPC stuff comes out, it pops up on Mario's channel first a lot of the time. And the problem I've had with it so far, and the reason you haven't seen me do a lot of content on it, or really any content on it, is that it is a very niche project with a very high bar to entry technically. There's a lot of shit you got to do to get it working and put it together, and I've just thought that's interesting, and like out there, it's interesting and cool that people are doing this, but like, you know, remember back in the day where if you wanted an ExpressLRS receiver, you had to solder up your own receiver to a bare circuit board? Well, I'm like, that's cool, but I'm not going to make a video about that because very few people actually are going to go to the trouble. And that's how I have felt about OpenIPC. I don't know why this can't load right now. Emacs is getting ready to release an OpenIPC video transmitter camera and VRX. The Emacs VRX works with an Android phone, so like I'm not sure how shitty the latency is going to be. But RunCam has an OpenIPC-based camera and video transmitter, but no VRX. And we're starting to get to a point where we're seeing sort of commercially viable products that people can just buy, and that's the point where I am interested in making content about the project. I think it's got a lot of potential, so very, very soon. Terminal Insanity says OpenIPC has too much drama going on amongst its devs in the community. Yeah, and I don't know how much I want to speak to that because for the most part I've stayed out of it. But like, there are some open source projects like the ExpressLRS project where it seems like the devs are super freaking wholesome and just every interaction is basically positive. And there's other projects where it seems like there's just all this arguing and finger pointing and kind of sniping. And I have noticed that the OpenIPC project seems to skew in the dramatastic direction. It does, obviously, from a user's perspective, maybe it doesn't matter, but it does leave a certain taste in the mouth, especially as someone who I will make a video about their stuff. And I've had situations in the past where if devs felt like I didn't do the job they wanted me to do with their hardware, then I became public enemy number one and got a lot of flack for it. And it really puts a bad taste in my mouth and makes me kind of want to be like, well, I don't want to freaking touch this again. So I have some concern that will happen. I have seen some shit talking of me in the past on their Telegram channel. It doesn't matter, but it has sort of predisposed me to believe that the first time I make a review of this or a video about this product, if it's not amazingly effusive or if I get any technical detail wrong, I will need to just put my big boy pants on and remember that the internet doesn't rule my life and people can talk about you and you don't have to care. But I'd rather not have to do that. So, okay. Thanks for Bardwelling and Bluntying. Thank you for the donation. Little Gray FPV, thank you for a $10 super chat. Just want to say thank you for answering a question I emailed you a few weeks ago. And as a reminder to everyone out there, if you didn't get your question answered on the stream, and there are many that we didn't get to, email me, jb@joshuabardwell.com, and I will answer the questions that you send me. Johnny5 says, didn't like that OpenIPC went after Madstech for discussing some shortcomings. Yeah, that kind of thing is what gives me pause and makes me want to just shit-can the whole project mentally and never talk about it again. Because, like, if I can't talk honestly and then I'm going to get a bunch of flack from the devs or from the community, it reminds me of Flight 1, which is out of business and dead, so I can talk about it. No matter how good Flight 1 was, if I talked about it and I didn't say the right things, then just immediately a huge amount of hate. And like, hate comments are just part of being on the internet, but it doesn't mean it's fun to have to be in a position where they're headed your way. You know? Do you think DJI will ever update the OSD symbol table in the O3 so we get full? No, never. Never. I don't think they will ever do that. I think that they have moved on in their dev cycle, and they're developing for the 04. And there's the way that DJI works, in my experience, is the FPV product comes out, and it's less than perfect, and there are features people want. And there is a window of perhaps 4 or 6 months where they do like one big update that gives people some bug fixes in firmware. And people go, oh, see, DJI is listening. And then they move on to the next thing. And they never fix it. They never fix anything again. I shouldn't say never, but... And then occasionally, when the next generation comes out, they reach back and they do a real quick one last update on the last generation that fixes or changes 1 or 2 things before they move on. But no, I don't think they're ever going to update the frickin' font table so it works with iNav. No, I don't. They haven't fixed the binding bug where if you switch on the V2 goggles, if you switch between the 03 and the Vista, you lose binds. That's a major bug that affects a lot of people, and they've never fixed it because the V2 doesn't exist for them anymore. Well, they're not going to do a bug fix on some bug from a 5-year-old product. And I think that's the same situation with the OSD table on the 03. So, ooh, okay, I hear you. I see you. Where's that question? Off topic, end of stream question. Dream American muscle car. I immediately know the answer. Now, there's going to be some debate as to whether this is a muscle car or a sports car or a race car. Well, it's not a race car. It's street legal. But the absolute immediate answer is the Ford Mustang GTD. This is a... Okay, I'm a little bit annoyed that it's based on the S650 platform and not the S550, because like the S550 is the one I bought, and so it's like, you know, just the one that I think kind of looks the most right. But this is a freaking unbelievable car. And as far as American muscle cars go, like, I don't know what out there even comes close, because so many manufacturers aren't bothering to make... Let me see if I can find a better picture. So many manufacturers just aren't bothering to make cars like this anymore at all. Oh, wow. Yep. Now, you could certainly argue the Mustang GT500. And it's based on the S550 platform, so it has the body styling that appeals to me. That's a baller car, no doubt. I think the GTD is even higher performance. That's GT500, a little bit more of a pure muscle car. And then the other one that maybe is in the running is the GT350, which has the Voodoo engine, revs to 8,000 RPM. The uniqueness of the GT350 engine certainly gives it a place in history. There are many people out there who would take the GT350 over the GT500. I don't think the GT350 is a good, like, daily driver. The GTD isn't a daily driver either. The GT500 probably isn't a daily driver. But, like, all of them are incredible performance cars in their own right. But, like, if you had to pick, like, the one, like, top American muscle car today. Well, I don't even know if you can buy the GTD yet. I think it has to be the GTD. Right? What is a sort of more, like, somebody's going to say that, like, the Dodge Charger Red Eye, Hellcat Red Eye, because it's a drag car and that's what you really want. That's a true American muscle car. I'm like, nah. I don't know. Anyway. Now, here's the thing. People are saying Corvette ZR1. Okay. There is no doubt Corvette Corvette is basically making supercar performance at high-end road car prices. Corvette is absolutely just destroying the auto market in terms of what they deliver. You're getting performance on par with a $400,000 Ferrari in a lot of ways. Oh, but it's not a Ferrari. Okay. You know, it's ridiculous. You get a $130,000 car that can perform on par with a $500,000, $400,000 car or more. But like, Corvette is not a muscle car. There's no question that a Corvette is just like a pure sports car. And I feel like the Mustang GTD, as a result of its Mustang lineage, can at least kind of claim to be a muscle car, even though in a lot of ways it's like transitioned away from being a muscle car and is more of a pure sports car. Anyway. All right, well. That's my Italian impression. I thought, you know, because you're like, maybe I'll go look at, maybe someday I'll buy this car, and you never will. But like some days you fantasize, what would it be like if I bought a Corvette? And I went and I looked at the Corvette website and I went through the whole builder just to, well, what would it cost? I don't know. Maybe I could afford it. And then I found out that the Corvette doesn't actually have a back seat or a trunk. It has like a frunk. And I was like, I've been on so many road trips where my trunk is full. It's got my suitcase. It's got a big crate with a bunch of drone shit. My trunk is full, right? And I was like, I guess I'm never buying a Corvette. So, all right, guys, that is going to bring us to the end of the stream. Thank you guys so much for your questions and your participation. It's good to be back. Aaron Ciotti is going to be streaming, and we'll put the link to his chat. Is he posting it, Blunty? No. Did you post it, Blunty? The link to his chat? There it is.
Yes.
Blunty's posting it in the chat. You can head on over to Aaron Ciotti's channel and watch his stream. We'll be back tomorrow at 8 p.m. Good night, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody.